what we're doing in this session is I'm going to just bring some summary thoughts. Then you're going to have best part of 45 minutes to an hour to reflect on some pre-prepared reflection sheets and to think about what's your I will statements that you take away from this conference. I'll give more instructions on the reflection time when we get to that time, but some of you may, if you're here with your group, you might want to meet as a group for at least part of that reflection time and come up with some action points. Otherwise, if you're here on your own, you'll be able to take a bit of a walk for half an hour or so and just get with God and think things through. So to set that up, what my task is to kind of bring some sense of convergence of all the stuff we've been through. The conference has kind of gone out this way. It's been very divergent in its exposure to ideas and expressions of kingdom and missional lifestyle, and there's been story after story, and what we're trying to do today is start to actually bring it in, and rather than introduce a bunch of new stuff, just to pick up on what are some of the themes that have been running through the conference. So that's my task. I've been with serving in mission since 1979, so 35 years. Got the 35th year award this year from Campus Crusade, and there wasn't as many standing up the front to get their 35th year award as there was when I got my 5th year award. So the longer you're around, I've learned the secret: just don't quit. Just the last man standing gets the final prize. So stick around in mission, and God will continue to grant grace. But in those 35 years, first 20 years after being a school teacher for a short time, I started what was called Youth Ministries Australia as a part of Campus Crusade for Christ. And the focus was, how do we mobilise leaders based out of churches, so young adults, youth leaders, youth pastors, workers, etc. How do we mobilise them into the mission field that represents the youth culture of our nation? And our focus was not so much to be an agency that provided youth workers, which already there's so many good agencies doing that. So we thought, what are we going to add to the mix? And so we really saw the need was how to mobilise those who were already in the body of Christ to actually engage missionally with young people. And not just to get there, but to actually seek to build movements amongst young people. That young people would come to Christ, would be discipled and would lead their peers to Christ, and there'd be multiplication taking place. Leaders would be raised up. Young people would become young adults who are leaders. Young adults who are leaders would become other people in leadership within the church. The exciting thing for me 35 years later is that as I look around the country, there are, time and time again, I meet people who are in senior leadership positions, senior pastors of the biggest churches, they're in mission organisations or whatever else. And I'm incredibly humbled when I hear them say, and I'm sure this is an overstatement, and they say things like, the stuff that God taught me back then is still the DNA I'm running on today. And I've heard that so many times, I've thought, at first I thought, well, I must be a fantastic teacher. And I thought, oh, actually, no, it's not that, that's for sure. What is it that is kind of kept people tracking on a certain, they talk about it as my framework or as my DNA. And here's my reflection. It's given them a sense of grounding in the life of Christ, that they see to follow Jesus in mission is about making disciples who make disciples, and it's about leaving a legacy and building a movement. And it's kind of as simple as that, or you could say it's as profound as that. But once captured, once that frame of reference, that set of lenses captures you, you see everything through it. And that's what these leaders say. I'm still trying to do that today through my church. I'm still trying to roll it out today. So I've reflected on that significantly, and what we've been talking about this weekend is actually getting to that same core. What kind of is the reset button that we need to hit for the DNA of what drives us. That brings a simplicity, an elegant simplicity to things. So it's not complicated, but there's an elegant simplicity. I've come up in more recent days with these three words, because now that I'm working and thinking in terms of church planting, working and encouraging church planters and just seeing what we can do, what we can add to the rest of the people that are out there in this noble quest trying to generate multiplication. And this is the three words I've come up with. Incarnation, restoration, multiplication. Incarnation, restoration, multiplication. And I keep drawing this. I find myself on napkins or whatever else where I'm using. If I'm on a flight somewhere, I keep drawing this diagram, and it's kind of stuck in my brain. And I think it's stuck in my brain because I'm a bear of a very small brain. No, because it captures what I can't take any of those words away and still see the mission of Jesus. I can't take incarnation away. As the Father sent me, so I send you, Jesus said. And John 1, 14, 18, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory. We saw, we understood. It was literally fleshed out. We saw what it meant. Full of grace and truth. There was an experiential aspect to the truth of who God was. Lived out among us. He dwelt among us. And when Jesus was sent, he wasn't sent to the temple. He didn't sort of come a certain distance and then said, hey, just send the word out. I'm here if people want to drop by. Drop it back to my place. How do we get people to drop by? Well, I don't know, I better get a marketing campaign or something. People need to know I'm here. I'm in town. I've come to town. When I come down from, when we used to live in Sydney and all our family was still in Melbourne, we'd come down and we got so tired because every vacation was running around trying to catch up with everybody, friends, supporters, family. So we thought, this is crazy. So we used to send out lots of notice and say, hey, Saturday, we're home, we'd love to catch up with your open house, drop round. And you know what? Hardly anybody did. And then we could cross it off our list because everyone thought everyone else did, but they just didn't. And they missed their opportunity to catch up with Bill and Faye. Very functional for us. It's not how God worked. See, the incarnation, God came, but then he kept coming. He didn't stop at the temple. Then he was at Nazareth. And then he was connecting with John's movement. And then he was at Capernaum. And then he came to Matthew's house. And then he came to the Gadarene demoniac on the other side. He's still coming. He didn't came, he comes. And then he came to 5 Charles Court, Morwell in the Latrobe Valley. And that's where I met him. Can anything good come from Morwell? I know, you Warrigal people. And so it's not even he came to my home group. He's still coming. He's coming to people. He's coming to the bars. He's coming to wherever. That's the heart of God. Incarnational ministry. So we've got to be out there, not ever draw a circle around it and say to people, come inside the circle, wherever the circle is. That's not how God did it. Incarnational is the first thing. Second principle is restoration. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. The whole Matthew 5, 6, 7, Sermon on the Mount. For me, it's like a plumb line, and Jesus is the measure. When the disciples heard Jesus go through those Beatitudes, they must have been totally shocked at first, because they're thinking, the kingdom, yes. And he gives this list, and it's so inverted. Right side up, actually. And yet, when they reflected on it, I think they weren't shocked, because they thought, wow, actually, it looks a lot like Jesus. There was incredible familiarity. It's like, yeah, that's the person he is. Well, he is the plumb line. And when we come into a broken, needy world, we don't come to use a plumb line to judge. Sometimes you kind of, I can't wait. I knew, rip it down. See, it doesn't match up. Often we use the plumb line to judge. But a plumb line is used to construct as well as to judge. There's truth and grace. It reconstructs. So when Jeff Westlake talks about what kind of community do you want in our neighbourhood, the people are describing pretty closely, they're describing the plumb line. We want safety in the streets. We want a sense of peace. We want a sense of justice. You see, there's a longing in people, even though we all deviate from it, there's a longing in people for brokenness to be healed, for deserted places to be regained. It's restoration, it's kingdom. Incarnation, restoration. Thy will done on earth as it is in heaven. Now, often we stop there. Jesus didn't stop there. Multiplication. Multiplication. It's interesting. John 17, the priestly prayer of Jesus. He says, I've glorified thee on earth, having completed the work you gave me to do. It's still pre-cross. And he's going to the cross. Obviously, that's still a part of the completing the work. But the rest of the chapter, he talks about his disciples. It's just, I think it's 15 or 20 or so references, I didn't check it this morning, where he's talking about his disciples and those who will believe on account of them. It's about multiplication. Unless a seed falls to the ground and dies, the seed sower, the sower, the parable of the good soil, multiplication. Vine and the branches, multiplication, fruitfulness. Jesus did all three. This is the mission I see in Jesus. And when we are engaged and drop out any of those, it kind of ceases to work particularly. And it's not necessarily in this sequence, although it was with Jesus. In terms he came before he preached and taught and modelled the kingdom, and before he then multiplied himself and left the guys to continue the movement. We're all here because of what they did. In Aussies, I reckon there's the first question we have to ask. The question of legitimacy. Used to be, what are you? Oh, I'm a pastor. Oh, wonderful. Welcome, pastor. Everyone salute, stand up, sit here. It was kind of, in the Christendom era, to be of the church was legitimate. That's who I am. Welcome. That's not the case anymore. The fact that I'm a Christian is not an answer to the legitimacy question as to why have you come into our place. See, it's not just going in, it's actually going in and answering a legitimacy question. In a football club. Why are you here? What are you doing? Oh, I'm the chaplain. Oh, fantastic. Suddenly that one's a big tick. So how does my neighbourhood see that I actually have a legitimacy in being there?